Hey everyone, my name is James Zhang, and I'm joined with Nicholas Karen for our very first AAMHA podcast. For today's topic, we'll be talking about the pressures of success, and I think you can start us off, Nick, with what was it like for you to sort of deal with the pressures of success?
For me, it's kind of like I feel like for me and a lot of other people, like as an Asian American person, we're always kind of like expected to be either at least above average or the best or at least above average when we're like competing in anything we do. And that especially goes for like academics, extracurriculars, I guess like volunteering, talking to people, and always like kind of we need to feel like we need to be the best all the time. And a lot of people, I guess, like after a while, by trying the best every single time, you kind of don't have, if you don't put an outlet for yourself, you feel like, you're going to eventually burn out, you're going to crash because you feel like, oh, there's no way I can like, uphold all these things all the time. And I can't, like have a break for myself or something like that. So a lot of people feel like, oh, I have to like, be the best all the time when in reality, like, that's not true. We need to take, I guess, like breaks for ourselves. And with me personally, I guess like especially with times like during high school, I felt like I need to do like every single extracurricular activity, or I need to be the best in like academics. Make sure I took all the AP classes that I could. I was like doing really good in sports to make sure like I was like trying to be like the best in sports, and then also like doing Boy Scouts. Being active as I could in Boy Scouts and like being like, the president of the troop and like doing really well in the church community and like being president of like the youth group and also doing the youth minister assistant program and going to church services. So at some point I felt like, oh, I'm doing all these activities and I just keep doing like all these activities, but like what value do these activities all give to me as a person? So I don't know, I felt like I was just kind of like going through the motions of being, in some sense like a robot, like doing all these activities, but it's not giving me a sense of value or a sense of like development when I'm doing all these things. So uh, you know, during high school I kind of like felt like, oh, I have to do all these activities and keep pulling up. So I guess it wasn't until when I applied to college, like for me, I went to community college for 2 years at Northern Virginia Community College. And then this past fall, in the fall of 2019, I transferred to Virginia Tech. And at Virginia Tech, for me, it was like, oh, like I have to do the same thing like I did in high school to just be the best at everything. And so I tried out for like everything I could. I remember like I tried out for, and the first week I came back to Tech, there was like a business, since I was a junior, I needed an internship for the summer. So I was like, going to all of the business workshops and going to the business horizons interview session. And so I was just like trying so hard for a job. And at the same time, I was also applying to like, trying for a business fraternity, trying out for like a sports team, trying out for like all these honor societies and stuff like that. And I kept trying and trying and trying, but some things don't go your way. So like, I ended up not, getting an interview with like some of the companies I wanted to. I ended up not getting into acapella, like not getting into acapella. I ended up like, not getting into the business fraternity and not getting into the honor societies I wanted to get into. And at that point I was kind of stressed out. I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm used to just succeeding at everything, or like, trying to just, I try really hard and then eventually it'll work. Things will go my way. And, in this time it didn't. So I had to kind of take a step back, realize where I was and kind of accept like, oh, it's okay. In these circumstances to not like, I guess like, okay, I may not be the best and what everyone I guess sees as the image of like, oh, you're at the top, like you're in this club, in this club, in this club. So like a resume is seen as like being the best, but I have to realize that like, oh, I'm being the best person that I can be in a sense of like, okay, I tried really hard for getting to all these clubs and I got into like, maybe the rugby team and I got into like this and these classes and I'm doing really well, but I need to realize like, okay, I need to do what I can handle. I can't live up to the expectation of other people when it comes to being the best in your own light, because like that leads to burnout. That's what leads to you saying, oh, well, if you have an insecurity, you're not so good at something, you feel like it's a weakness rather than a stepping stone, something you need to improve on, and you can use that as a stepping stone forward. So kind of got to take a step back and realize what you're doing. So yeah, those are my experiences with like feeling your pressure to be successful, and that's why I think uh, so that's a good way of handling things when you feel like you're overwhelmed with too many activities.
I mean, I think
So
that's
yeah.
like pretty cool though, like what you mentioned about sort of like everything was sort of like working out until it wasn't. because like being pressured to succeed, it seems all good and dandy when you're doing just fine and you're succeeding, but the moment like you start like messing up or you start like not being able to meet those expectations, it can feel like, the world's like starting to fall down.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is pretty true. I didn't think about that part. Yeah, because it feels like, yeah, you're doing everything in a system very systematically, and then when one part of the system doesn't go your way, it kind of feels like everything is tumbling down on top of you, and you feel like there's no way out of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that makes
I
sense.
it's also like, I think there's like value in like when you're always like sort of expected to succeed, like failure seems like something you should avoid at all costs. But at least like from my experience, failures are also a like sort of really good way to like learn. Um, some of the best lessons I've ever learned weren't always from me like succeeding. Like for example, I think one one thing that ended up for me was I was actually also in Boy Scouts too. And I was actually shooting to be an Eagle Scout, but I had like this bad habit of sort of procrastination, but I always managed to just do everything in time, even if it was a little last minute. Like I still succeeded,
Mhm.
like I still got A's in school. I still could do everything like college or even high school. And so, but then when I tried to like shoot for ego, right, I didn't plan. You have to do like this big service project, right? And I just sort of didn't start out on time, and then I didn't push hard enough at certain bottlenecks that needed sort of more time and effort. And then I just ran out of time and it was like too late, which was like really unfortunate for me, but it's also just, something to like sort of reflect on to think about when I like look back on it now. It's like, hey, just make sure to start things early. And even if you are like smart or like you can do things like very quickly, it's better to just sort of do them in the here and now rather than wait like a few days or like a few months and stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good way of going about things. Like for me, I use since I got to college, I use Google Calendar religiously, and I recommend that like anyone who comes to college use Google Calendar and like every single time at least like put in the big things you want to do. Like I think for me, it's like the big things. Everyone's it's like okay, school. So you put in all your classes in your schedule, and then try to schedule a time like every single day, like 2 or 3 hours. That should be like focused towards like studying and getting things done. That way, all your hard work is out the way, and then it gives you more time to focus on things that you can improve yourself on, and that like are natural de-stressors. So you can like every single day, if you're having a rough day, you can kind of recuperate, focus on yourself, and realize, oh, it's okay sometimes, like this didn't work out. And then in the light of like things don't go in your way, it's like if you consider it a failure or not, you can either way look at it as like realizing where you are in the moment and using it as a stepping stone. Be like, okay, I know what I'm not good at and I'm good at. I know what to improve on, so I can improve upon my weaknesses, so I can improve as a person. So I think that's a really good way, like, yeah, tackling those big things first, because especially with like, when finals come around at school, like if you wait to the last minute to study for a test, you may still get the same grade like that you got before if you were studying early. But the key difference I've noticed for me is like the amount of stress and pressure that you experience when you put off things the last minute. Like every time I put off things last minute, I'm causing myself like unnecessary stress and like making everything kind of stressful, when I could just like, hey, I could finish assignments early, like when I had more free time, and then I can just be like, oh, well, this finals around, I already studied for the test. I can just chill out, hang out, maybe do some things I like to do. Like I can like, play video games with my friends, or go to the gym more, or focus on like hang out in some of the personal clubs I'm into, things like that, rather than like, stressing about a final and worrying about everything. So I think, yeah, that's a good way. Like starting early is a good way to like, really take a firm grasp on something and, get ahead.
Yeah, that's like it's also I think good to have some sort of like routine, like like every day, no matter what, you just do work for like an hour, like a block out an hour every day to do work. I think that also like sort of helps out with sort of procrastination, just because it just feels natural to do something. Just like when you wake up in the morning to brush teeth, or if you shower at night, you just it's good to follow some sort of routine to help out with that.
Mhm. I
Also,
agree.
like I was wondering too, for when you were dealing with like the pressures of success, do you think it came from you trying to outcompete other people, or was it more so having to do with sort of meeting like internal criteria that didn't have to do with other people?
I think it's probably a combination of both. Like, I guess like from my parents, I guess it's like we're expected to kind of like me and my brothers like be the best at everything you can be and put the most effort into it. So you like supersede everybody else. So I think having that constant pressure to be like, the best at everything. And then when you get to a point, like I guess you're kind of like above all the people in your group, it's kind of like, oh, well, like how do I kind of go from here to everything like that? And you're kind of like, there's no set agenda or criteria you have to meet. So I guess like at that point you kind of create your own internal goals and you have to like keep going up. But then sometimes I guess for me in that circumstance probably it's unrealistic. I have to like do all this and this and that. Like I think like I remember I became like the SPL my Boy Scout troop because I had done my Eagle Scout project. Like my mom wanted me to finish it early, so I remember I finished it like I think I did when I was like 16 or something, my sophomore year. And to a lot of people when I talk to other Boy Scouts do the Eagle Scout project, a lot of them I think have like put it like they tend to do their project like when they're 17 and something months or like towards like the end of high school because I guess like that's just like the average. Like I think a lot of them like I guess a lot of other like grades and like SATs and ACTs and like other extracurriculars kind of like take precedence or take priority like over those things. So they tend to like
Right.
put it off the last minute. So I remember I got it done early, and then I was like the SPL. I think my senior or junior year, and then I think I had this idea in my head. It's like, yo, I have to help everybody get to Eagle Scout and all this. But I have to realize at some point, like sometimes that doesn't happen. Like just because it's your expectation doesn't mean you can exactly make it a reality.
Right.
So I like tried the bet, like, I had kind of at that point, like, I really realized like I have to realize like, oh, there's things that are inside of my locus of control, things that aren't. Like I can help as much as I can to help these kids and put them on the right track, like freaking Eagle Scout and planning out properly. But it's ultimately up to them how much effort they put in and how much they commit to this activity and what their end goal is. So that's something outside of my control, and that's something that I can't control. And I have to be okay with the fact that, oh yeah, I did the best I could in this circumstance to like allow everybody else to like keep moving up. But I shouldn't like judge myself and like but it's like, oh yeah, if like I failed because like these people didn't exactly have the proper output, I shouldn't make an unrealistic expectation in that sense, because that's just going to make me suffer and feel like, oh, I'm not adequate enough or I didn't make the best effort enough to like help other people.
Right. I think that's like a really like interesting thing to know because like for me, I think some of the most precious I've ever felt was during high school actually when I felt compelled to like compete with like within my friend group, especially like early on during my high school. It always felt like we were like competing each other to see who could get grades with the minimum effort, and I think that was probably suffocating it can be sometimes because you can't always be better than someone else. Because you know like sometimes in competitions, like even if you're the best at something, even like someone who's quote unquote like worse than you can still just sort of upset you. And I think I learned this through sort of personally my time playing like competitive League of Legends is just sort of like, oh, even if in a tournament, right, if you're the better team, sometimes the other players just have a really good day and they play better than you and you just lose. You might not even be the worst team, but you don't see that success because you're on the losing side, even though everything normally points to you being sort of the better team. And I think that's what actually makes competing with other people so stressful sometimes is because you never know when someone's gonna have like a really good day and then just all of a sudden make you look worse or something like that. Because when you compare success to other people, it's always relative,
Mhm.
and sometimes because it's relative, the end goal always seems to move past the initial starting point, right? Because if I'm trying to on like a test, it's an A is always an A. But if I'm trying to get the highest grade out of my class, one day it could be 80%, and then like another day it could be a 90%. And I think because of like how like variable like the success can be, it's also like important to like just be like, oh, it's like it's okay. Like some days are just not your days.
Yeah. I think it's important that you have to take that into account because there's a lot of there's like an infinite amount of factors that are interdependent upon each other that cause an event to happen. And sometimes things just don't happen in your favor. So you kind of have to accept like, oh, this isn't, whatever. And then especially in like something like a competition, like, when you have like a winner and a loser, someone's gonna go home like unhappy in that circumstance, because like someone's gonna like there's gonna be something that happens here and there that's like maybe I guess in League of Legends, like you swarm and like someone drift, someone summons, and then like you end up winning the match, and it can be like a small factor in the game, or like a small turn of the tide in the game that ultimately like results in one team losing and one team winning. So it's important that you don't judge yourself too harshly and things like that, to be like, oh, like this is what happens, like and then especially in a competition, like someone is going to lose and someone is going to be declared like the winner in that circumstance. So you can't hold yourself too heavily to like those labels.
Yeah, like the process is important, right? Because you always want to learn. There's always something to learn, and success isn't necessarily like purely just being the winner of something or the loser. I think that's something to important to keep in mind. It's also like nice to have like a group of friends who also understand that. I think like for example in college, I like always felt like I was lacking somewhere. Like I felt like my grades, even though they were very high, like I graduated cum laude, but they never felt sort of high enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it was always good to have like some friends keep me grounded, saying like, "Oh, it's okay, James. You're like doing great. You're doing the best you can, and good enough." And that's just something that is always very like reassuring to hear. Just knowing that after doing your best, like your best is good enough.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like you need to kind of accept who you are, like what your best, and like also like I think that ties into the fact as well, like you might have a certain expectation for where you think you're going to be at, but in reality like you might be less than that. And that's because like obviously everyone has really high expectations, especially among like I guess like Asian Americans. We try to shoot for like the stars. We try to be the best. Like if we want to be like a doctor, like we want to be the best doctor out there. We want to go to like the best med school. If we want to be like a lawyer, we want to go to like we want the best lawyer out there, make the most money, be like at the top of everything. And I think a lot of us try to focus too much on the end goal of like, we want to be the best, the best, the best, the best, the best. But we forget all the steps in between where we are to right now and the best that we can possibly be. And we forget all the stepping stones that have to go into progress. So like, you're never gonna, and then like, I think also the idea of like, being the best that you can, it's not exactly like a state of being. Like I don't think there's actually like a state of being into the best you can, but it's simply like a target to aim at, and you can keep progressing and aiming towards like improving yourself every single day and improving and becoming better than you were before. And that's like the I think like the idea of success, because every single day you have to keep working and chiseling away and like putting in the time and the effort to become better than you were the day before. So you have to keep that in mind when like you're trying to measure success. Like as long as like if you keep going forward, that's what's most important, because you at first you might not succeed in like where you want to be, but you have to keep working towards that goal.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well put. Because success, even if you think you could have done better, like like sometimes it's just things that prevent you from doing it. Like, I think the coronavirus is actually a good example of this, because everyone's like, "Oh, you're stuck indoors. You should be more productive because you're at home." But that's just not how it works. Just because there's a lot of underlying like, tension in the air from the coronavirus itself. Like how is, like, for example, your family could be missing money, and then all of a sudden you're worrying about money, and this is like time you can't spend into being sort of quote unquote productive. And it's always important to judge a situation like as a whole. You can't just look at yourself sometimes, because there's going to be outside factors that sort of can gate your success. And it might not let you live up to like 100% your potential, but as long as you like try your best to get through it, I think it's like sort of very noble and shows a lot of good qualities and characteristics in you.
No, that is true. I never thought about it that way. um yeah, that does make sense. That's true, because also you have to go like your own, I guess, natural rate, and then I guess your best self shows, and you develop like a sense of your own personality and individualism that makes you unique to every situation and how you like approach a problem. Does that make sense? Because also I
Yeah.
think like what is it? I forgot what it was, but like I think I forgot. But I heard like some engineering professors, they'll make a test, and I guess like they'll try to like make an answer. I guess like they'll put an answer on the test, and then they'll like have it, and then like I think some people they go on a website called Chegg, and Chegg's like this solution website that has all the answers to everything. So I think like people will like go on Chegg and they'll like find the answer that like someone anonymously posted, and they'll use that on the test, and the teacher will say later like, oh, so in reality like there was no answer, like I made it so there's no answer to that question, but I wanted to see like, oh, what are people's thought processes and everything going out, and what's their analytical approach to like solving this problem and how they come to this. And essentially there might not be an answer, but like they want to show you like what your thought process is and how you develop yourself and how like you approach this problem and what solutions you have to it. But you ultimately you tried really hard, and sometimes like I guess in that sense like there was no answer. So like I guess the same thing is like when you're trying to be the best at something, it's like there is no like final answer or final form of whatever, but it's like how you keep trying and attacking problems, and like you slowly chip away at like becoming like how you come to analyze a problem and like fix it, keep going up from there. Because sometimes like there is no like exact final form or final answer or final like physical tangible or like ideal state that you can be in, that's like true contentment of like a rewarding feeling of like, oh yeah, I am like now like the like over everybody else, I'm like this and this and whatever like that is. Like there's no, I don't think that exists exactly. It's just like you keep going up from there.
Right. Like, and, life is messy. Like, there's no like perfect right or wrong. Like on a test, you think like real life, it's usually very gray, and the only times it gets very black and white is when you like hyper focus on like specific situations. But everything is very very gray, and so you can't always get what you want, but having a good process to get there is always very helpful, because you might get the answer that you're looking for, or you might not, but your process will always stay around if you keep following it.
Yeah, I think it's important that you have that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that overall process is really important because like in a sense like that kind of creates like a sense of like routine that you have in every single thing, and it keeps you grounded to who you truly are. Like I think a lot of people sometimes they lose their routine, or they lose like having a sense of who they are themselves. Like that process of like having an idea of like, oh, this is how I can get myself back up to where I want to go. When you're feeling down, you can get yourself back up to a better place than you were before. So it really helps, I guess, ground yourself to the idea of like, oh, I'm okay with being content with always need to constantly improve myself and move up and experience new things and go up.
Right. Being Sometimes it's okay to just be content or happy with how things ended up being, even if like it wasn't absolutely ideal, or you didn't achieve the success that someone else expected you to. If you're happy with it, then what's wrong with it?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that does make sense. Yeah. So I guess what are some like overall tips that you would, I guess, stick to people who are going through mental pressure or the pressures of like, being the best all the time, James?
Well, it's sort of like, well, one, it's I think one thing that's always nice is to have people there to sort of support you and say, like, let you know that when they see you doing your best and you give me in general effort. I think it's nice to have them be there and be like, hey, I see the hard work you're putting in, and I'm like very proud of you. Like that's one thing that's always helpful to have, because as for me, I'm usually my own harshest critic. So having other people around me to keep me grounded is like a very welcoming thing. And I think if you don't sort of have that environment, it's usually best to find it. But it's always important to remember that your success isn't defined by other people's success as well. If they keep wanting you to succeed, or like if you didn't meet their ideas of success, it's like it's their idea of success. It's not yours. You should
Yeah.
just always make sure that one thing that you're happy. You know.
Yeah.
You shouldn't live your life to like please other people, right? Because you're your own person. You have every ability in the world to do what you want.
Mm.
Like as long as you know you're not hurting other people, but it's the world is your oyster, and you know if you don't have the success you're looking for today, it might happen tomorrow. It might happen in a few days. It might happen in months or years, but you can find the success you're looking for.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's also important that people remember that like you should be doing what you love doing, because I think like a lot of people when they measure success, like I think sometimes it comes down, I guess, when you're doing things you don't want to do and things don't work out and people judge you and you this is exactly something you're not passionate about or something you like to do or know how something functions. So you end up feeling like, you know, even more pressure to be the like, you know, be really good at something that you're not exactly the best at or have passion about. So end of the day, I think you just do what you want to do, because some people are going to congratulate you for what you do. Some people are always going to be like, you know, critics of you. But end of the day, you're the person who's control of your life. So if you're not doing what you love doing, then it's not going to be the best outcome for you, in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah, it'd be like that sometimes.
It do be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that kind of concludes our topic about like, you know, talking about pressures of being the best. Thanks, James, for tuning into this weekly podcast, and I want to thank like our viewers also for tuning in. And I hope other people can tune into our bi-weekly mental health podcast. And I hope you stay tuned for more content about Asian American mental health to come on our website and like our media posts. So stay tuned and have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.